Welcome to another edition of Dragon Ball Retrospectives where myself and the legendary Herms, we go back and pretty much revisit classic Dragon Ball, the anime, and compare it to the manga and give our thoughts. And, for those who did not know, Herms went back, or for those who don't know, Herms went back and rewatched the entire series of Dragon Ball through Z and GT. And on Twitter, as he was watching it, he was giving his ratings. There's an entire catalog of his thoughts, which I'm going to leave a link to down below. So please welcome back the legendary translator himself of mythical proportions, Herms.
Hello.
All right, welcome back. So, when we last did one of these, we left off with the big cliffhanger, which was actually the same cliffhanger from Dragon Ball Z Season 5 on Toonami. I think it was a great cliffhanger. I think it's a great way to end that season. Obviously, in Japan, it aired all the way through with only a few breaks here and there. But a week off and whatnot, 2 weeks off. But in America, it was cut up into seasons, and I thought it was brilliant that they actually left it off here. So we pick it right back up with Majin Vegeta. He blew himself up. He killed himself. He's dead. And now we're back with Buu regenerating himself. Now, you gave these early episodes 2.5, 3 ratings. Is it because they're just fillers, or was it just more boring to you?
Well, I think it's just a big come down after the climax with him self-destructing. So I guess it's kind of inevitable that these wouldn't seem as good in comparison. But also, they apparently blew their animation budget on the end of the Majin Vegeta section. So starting with the very next episode afterwards, everything looks kind of bad. Which
Yeah.
I don't want to be too superficial and just automatically give low ratings to episodes with bad animation, but it does, there's nothing major. It's all kind of just low-key events, and then combining that with not so great animation. It's not terrible episodes, but not the best episodes.
I like to call this part of the series like Act 2 of the Buu Saga, because, like we talked about, the Majin Vegeta sacrifice scene was a big, he killed himself for the good of, of his family and of the future. Didn't work out. Buu survived, regenerated that. That blast could have killed almost anybody at that point in the series, but Buu survived, and then the whole thing now was beginning to set the stage for what was coming. And the way they wrote it, Herms, I thought was very interesting. How you have Toriyama pretty much setting up 3 different plot threads here. You've got the plot thread of Gohan interacting with the Kaioshin and Kibito and learning, pulling out the Z sword and, learning, or I guess training to become stronger. This is before he would break the Z sword. Then you have the plot thread of Goku introducing fusion into the series for the very first time. And then you have the plot thread of Babidi pretty much threatening the entire world with the destruction of it if if they don't turn over Goten, Trunks, and Piccolo. I thought the scene where Buu and Babidi are talking to the entire world, I thought that was a fantastic scene, and I think it was like a step above like Cell being on television. This is like, okay, we're telepathically, this is some, rapture end of the world type stuff here. We're telepathically telling all of humanity that you're going to get wiped out.
Yeah, I like the logistics of that. Everyone has to close their eyes to see him.
Yeah,
And just,
they can't just think it.
yeah. And yeah, it's the magic version of Cell going to the TV studio.
I want to talk about Super Saiyan 3. Because, okay, Gabby and I talked about this about a year ago. I don't know if we even did a video on it. It might have been private. But obviously, we've talked about this before too, man, that Toriyama is a discovery writer. And based on rewatching this part of the series and rereading the manga, it really seems like he had absolutely no plans for SS3 until right before he introduced the form. Because Goku plainly states, and again, it could just be Goku, it was retcon later to Goku saying, oh, I wanted to give the kids something to do, but Goku says, me and Vegeta were fighting at our max, that this is it, I can't beat Majin Buu, and then just a few episodes, literally 3 or 4 episodes later, we see SS3. What do you think was the history behind this? Do you think Toriyama really did just come up with it last minute?
I mean, that's what it seems like from the series, like you said. But the odd thing is, in interviews, when Toriyama was talking about the origin, why he came up with the idea of fusion, and this was in one of the Shenlong Times that came with the Daizenshu. So in one of those interviews where he's talking with, was it Masakazu Katsura,
Yeah,
his manga artist friend, did Video Girl Eye and Zetman. What is the superhero thing he does now?
I have no idea. I actually didn't know he was still working. I have no idea. But you're
Oh,
talking about
but
the guy who said you should make characters fused together or something like that. That
yeah,
guy, yeah.
and in Toriyama's telling of this event, he's saying like, I don't know. At the time, he's complaining to his friend. He's like, I don't know what to do, how to make these characters stronger because I've already got Super Saiyan 3. It's getting completely ridiculous. And that's, according to Toriyama, that's when Katsura suggested, oh, why don't you just combine the characters together? And so it's like in this version of events, he came up with the idea for Super Saiyan 3 before fusions, even though from the series itself, obviously fusions is I don't know why I keep saying fusions. I guess because of the video game.
Right.
Okay, the fusion dance is introduced before the Super Saiyan 3 transformation. So I don't know, like maybe it is Toriyama misremembering the sequence of events after the fact. But I don't know, maybe it is he did just have it in the back of his mind that this would be a transformation that would come up, even though, like, he knew that was going to happen even before it appeared, and then that's why he came up with the fusion dance. Like, I don't know, there seems to be some kind of contradiction that might be due to Toriyama misremembering events after the fact, or maybe he was thinking things ahead more than it seems like if we just go by this story.
Yeah, because the story makes it seem like it really was like an ass pull, but maybe it wasn't. I was gonna ask you actually. You know those designs. You know the early SS3 drafts where you have Goku with the tail. Is there a date on those that maybe could be referenced? Do you remember if there was a date on the designs?
I don't think so. Yeah, because I mean, if they were in a sketchbook, they probably wouldn't even have a date, like anything specific.
I was just wondering if maybe he had dated it because that might give us a clue. Yes, it's hard, but it just seems like it was kind of a last minute thing, you know, with that transformation. And then we have the Goku versus Buu fight. Now, a couple things about this fight that a lot of fans have been bothered by, and that was the whole thing about Goku fighting Buu and how, you know, he's telling Trunks to go to Capsule Corp, but he doesn't want to, you know, he wants Trunks to do it even though he can just instantaneously move there and get the Dragon Radar. Some fans have said it was a plot hole. I mean honestly, I always thought it was Goku wanted to fight Buu because, you know, he likes to fight. That's the way I always perceived it, that he wanted to fight Buu for fun and just came up with that excuse for Trunks to do it. Like, is that how you saw it, or is it just bad writing in your opinion?
I mean, to a certain extent, but even then, like the whole idea of them needing to go get the Dragon Radar, it just seems like kind of a contrivance to get Goku to fight Buu, because it's like, you know, they could have brought it with them from the start. There's no reason for them to have just forgotten it other than they forgot it. And even then, like the idea that, if you go back to the Piccolo arc, the Bulma says she can make a Dragon Ball radar from scratch. It'll take her, like, I don't know, a certain amount of time, but it's not an irreplaceable item. Whereas suddenly in the Buu arc, at least, she's like, you know, if the West City gets blown up when we lose the Dragon Radar, I'll never ever be able to get another Dragon Radar.
Right.
We'll never be able to find the Dragon Balls. And I mean, you know, maybe they don't have the right materials up there, but I don't know. It seems like there ought to be other ways other than just rushing to get the Dragon Radar. And I mean, it's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's like as far as motivations to get Goku to fight Buu, it's, you know, just stalling for time while Trunks gets something. It's not that exciting.
Now, you did a podcast on the Kanzenshu podcast. I want to say it was like 4 years ago, where, and I don't even know if you remember this, but I'll remind you. You talked about with Mike. You talked about the Dragon Ball wishes and how there's a little bit of an inconsistency here because, you know, when we left off in the Cell arc, we know that Dende upgraded the dragon to 2 wishes. Then in the Buu arc, it's almost as if that they upgraded to 3 and then they went down to 2 and then 3 again. You know what I'm talking about? How they basically were like, well, if you make a big wish, it counts as 2 or something like that?
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, we had a whole podcast topic about this, and essentially, like, in the Cell games, the way they explain it doesn't entirely rule out the idea of them having 3 wishes, but it's like, no one like, it doesn't seem like that's what they're going for. It's like, yeah, it's like, you know, he starts out saying, oh, I could have it be 3 wishes, but then they're like, oh, could it revive lots of people? Could it revive people multiple times? They're like, oh, in that case, it'll be 2. And it's
That's
like,
right.
you know, it makes it sound like it'll just be 2 always. like he doesn't say, oh, it'll be 2 in that case or something, but he doesn't say it'll be 2 then, but otherwise, if you don't use that sort of wish, it'll be 3. He doesn't say anything like that. But then suddenly, when you get to the Buu arc, yeah, they say like specifically like Piccolo and Goku, they lay it out like, oh, because they used that one wish to revive a lot of people, now there's only one other wish left, whereas otherwise, if they just wished for panties or whatever, they would have had 2 wishes left.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of like, yeah, essentially like wishing back a lot of people uses up 2 wishes, which actually isn't a term they use until Super, oddly enough, when Shenlong in the Super version of Resurrection F, Shenlong says like essentially, yeah, it uses up 2 wishes. But anyway, so despite the fact that this seems like a new rule, Goku doesn't react to it as if it's new. He's like, oh yeah, now that you mention it, that's how it was. Like they're treating it like this was the way it was set up from the start, even though that doesn't seem to be what Dende's dialogue implied during the Cell games.
But later on, they used 2 more wishes.
Well, they don't. Hold on. No, they only have 1 wish to erase everyone's memories.
But wasn't
in
that?
The
But
Buu
that
arc.
was. Well, wait, wasn't okay. The first wish they made was in this again. We're doing this off of memory here. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I do have your thing pulled up. The first wish that they made was right after the Majin Vegeta thing, when they went to Capsule Corp and they wished back people who had died. That's how Kibito came back to life. Then, Are there not 2 more wishes at the end of the arc? I could have sworn there was the other wish at the end of the Buu fight.
Well, at the end of the Buu fight, they use Palunga.
Yeah.
And they use all 3 wishes, and the climactic wish is to restore Goku's stamina, and then that's all the wishes with him, with the Namekian dragon, and then they have Shenlong erase everyone's memories of Buu, and so that's only 2 wishes that they use with the Earth Dragon Balls.
That's 2 wishes. Okay, that's right. So, that goes back to the whole 2 wishes thing. So that first wish ate up 2 wishes, but they said it was 6 months later, as opposed to 4 months.
So there is a contradiction because I can't remember which order it is, but immediately after they make that first wish, Dende says either they'll be able to use the Dragon Balls again in either 4 or 6 months, and then later when the narrator at the end of the Buu arc, when he says, and then X months later, he says he switches it. So one time they say 4 months later, and then the second time they actually say 6 months later.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay, you pretty much picked out what I was thinking of in my head, but I don't have the manga pulled up in front of me to pick that out. Yeah, and the anime didn't really fix that. Now, wanted to ask you about the Babidi death. We've gone over this a few times, but I haven't actually gone over it with you yet. Obviously, Dragon Ball Z is significantly more violent than Dragon Ball Super. This is one of the most violent and bloody and gory scenes in the whole series. And I talked to Julian about this briefly, and he mentioned that, we talked about this also as well, that in Japan there was a new prime minister elected, and that I think it was the television standards, right? They changed, so you couldn't have stuff be that gory. But then the other thing I had read was that because Super's on Sunday mornings as opposed to Wednesday nights, which is when Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z were on, and I think GT too, yeah, GT. That's another reason why it's toned down. Which one is it most likely? Is it the fact that it's a time slot, or the fact that Japan as a whole is less violent?
Well, I think it's both. Like, you can't really separate those out, but I mean, yeah, I think those are both 2 important factors.
Yeah, because I had read both, and I was like, which one is it? So you're saying it's both then?
Well, that would be my guess, is that they're both, maybe not equally important, but they're both important. Like, it's not one or the other.
Yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense. Now, then we have the episode, right, with the the Megumi, Hayashibara, the blind kid, and all that. They are teasing Buu becoming good. I remember having the fan sub of this, and it actually said special guest star Megumi Hayashibara, and of course, I had no idea who that was. Did that mean a lot to you, knowing that?
Well, I did go in just knowing that this was a cameo, and I guess we should say she's done so many,
That's a legend.
Faye from Cowboy Bebop, and Ray, and let's see. Should be able.
Too many. She was in Ranma. She was in Evangelion. She was in Slayers. I mean, she's just an anime I don't even know what you love. Hina. She's in everything, dude. She's even in Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, and I mean that's the thing is that it was inevitable that she would be in Dragon Ball at some point.
Yeah.
And this was actually mentioned one of the interviews they did with just the voice actors in general, like one of the roundtable things in one. I think it was the Dragon Ball Z Son Goku Densetsu book or something. I don't know. They mentioned like just having the process where they cast her for this part. And if I remember correctly, it was essentially that she just wanted to be on one episode. And they're like, okay, here's a small role you could do.
Yeah, and it's funny because she's such a legend that you would think they would give her a main role, but nah. I mean, just the blind kid who drinks milk that was originally people. So,
yeah.
Wanted to get your thoughts also on Goku showing Goten and Trunks SS3. Now, this was not in the manga. Not the way they did it here, but a lot of fans have said this is one of the better anime changes because it actually, in a way, kind of gives a little bit of validity to the fact that Gotenks was able to use SS3 because when you have Goten and Trunks seeing the form, some people have theorized that that's how they were able to achieve the form, but it wasn't in the manga. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think this was a positive change in the anime?
I mean, I'm not opposed to the idea of it, like the way you said, like, oh, if they see it, then make it easier for them to learn. But I mean, the way the episode plays out, it's just basically just padding. They reuse a lot of animation from the first transformation, right? Like basically the whole thing.
Yeah, it is. It's almost the same. Yeah, it's like the same thing. It's the same angles and everything. Yeah, the Goku face and everything. It's the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's just I don't know, it's kind of cheesy, just just classic filler of just drawing it out. And it's like I don't know. I mean, even saying like, well, if they saw it, then that would help them. But I don't know. Would that even necessarily help them that much?
That's always been just the fan headcanon,
Yeah, and it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, overall, I just don't think there's much point in doing it a second time.
So one of my favorite filler episodes, and I love this episode, was Dragon Ball Z 251. It's the one where base Gotenks goes to fight Fat Buu, and he's all cocky and, he's all arrogant. He ends up getting stomped, just completely curb stomped by Fat Buu. Even the Fat Buu, which as we believe is weaker than Super Buu, he goes in there and he gets, slaughtered by Fat Buu because he, was overconfident. This was I thought it was a fantastic filler episode. You gave it 3.75, which is a pretty solid rating. I would probably like it a little bit more. So, what do you think about that episode? Do you think that it makes sense for Gotenks to have lost to Buu like that? Because I loved it, but what do you think?
Well, this is a fight that it's not shown in the manga, but it does occur. But it all happens off panel.
Yeah, because he comes back all bruised, right?
Yeah, and that's the whole joke is that he flies off, says, "Oh, I'm gonna kill Buu." Like, be back in a second, and then very next panel, he comes back all beat up and says, "Oh, I got my ass kicked." And so it's one of these very almost like one of those not One Punch Man type jokes if Gotenks is the person who Saitama would fight. But, it's the whole joke is that it happens. It's just immediate. Like the joke is you don't see the fight because it's just the implication is he's just immediately defeated. And so, yeah, in the anime version, they actually show the fight, which is neat. It's neat to actually get to see those two characters fight because otherwise we don't get an opportunity for that. And,
no, I love it. It's actually the literal sense of the word filler. They literally filled in what was just implied in the movie, or I'm sorry, in the manga, excuse me.
Yeah, and it's, it's good in that sense, but I think it does, I enjoy watching it, but it does sort of take away from the overall, it's essentially just taking longer to get to the same punchline, which is that he loses really easily. So yeah, I guess right. I am torn. Like I said, I gave it a good rating, but not I don't consider it a great episode. I guess for that reason, because in the end, it's not an essential event to be shown.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. And if the animation in that episode looks so great, though, and the performances, the fact they fought at that pier or whatever you want to call it, that was a unique place to fight. We haven't really seen a fight like that ever since then, I don't think.
Yeah, that is one of the good things about fights that are only in the anime, only in the movies or whatever. They usually have backgrounds that you don't get in that are in the manga, because Toriyama doesn't really like doing complicated backgrounds. And if the background is complicated here, have the characters destroy it, so it'll just be a wasteland that's easier to draw.
It's easier for him.
So
yeah,
and Yeah, so that's why it's usually only in the anime that we get these cooler backgrounds. So that is one aspect I do enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely love like movie 12. You know, you have the weird hell with the red like balloon things, and you have like movie 13, the city. Like I love that stuff when they, you know, explore that. So we're going to go ahead and stop it right there. Next time, we're going to continue our discussion of the Buu Saga and get into the Gotenks versus Buu fight in the Room of Spirit and Time. If you are new to the channel and you have not heard these before, I'll leave a link to the playlist down below. Herms and I did these little podcasts where we went over the entire Dragon Ball series, starting with Dragon Ball, the movies, Dragon Ball Z, and all the movies for that as well. So check them out. I hope you enjoy them. I hope you enjoy our discussions. A lot of really in-depth talk about what was going on in the manga and the anime at the time. So I hope you really like those and look forward to more of these in the future as we wrap up the Buu Saga. I got a few more of these coming, so I hope y'all enjoy that. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great day.